may have guessed it from the picture there, but it is a spotlight and speaker, the DJI Zenmuse S1 and the DJI Zenmuse V1. So spotlight and speaker. So I'm going to take you through these new products and some of the applications that we see for them. So S1 is our first spotlight for a multi-payload drone platform, right? Think of the larger Matrice series with the multiple swappable payloads, and the same for the Zenmuse V1 being our first speaker there. So really multiple modes across both that we'll cover today, but can see some of the key selling points that we'll cover across both. One of the major questions, obviously, probably compatibility here out of the gate. Works with both the 350 and the 300, but does require the DJI RC Plus. So throughout our training today, we're going to go ahead and introduce both of these payloads, talk about the functionalities available, some of the applications, and then the after sales side of the house as well. So first off, looking at the S1 Spotlight here, you do have multiple lighting modes available, low beam, high beam, both on and strobe mode, and we'll cover which of those are which beams here shortly. You can see some specific specs there on the brightness available and the overall low power consumption. So you can see rated power there at 68 watts with the high beam mode coming in at 17 watts. So really what this means at the end of the day is capable of helping you observe items with the camera from over 500 meters when pairing that with something like the H20 or H30 series, as well as providing sufficient lighting in dark environment for helping teams complete various tasks. So overall, our focus points when building this payload has really been keeping it lightweight and being able to mount it to any of the gimbal ports for different applications. The ability to work with multiple payloads all at the same time, and then making sure that it works well together with our other payloads. So we'll cover some of the safeguards we have built in and some of the tools to help one be successful with these payloads as well. So looking at the spotlight here, you can see around the outside of the payload, we have 1, 2, 3, 4 low beams. That's utilizing some lamp beads kind of behind the glass there. Field of view is going to be 15 degrees there, and that illumination will cover about 5x or above for the zoom camera on those H series payloads, right? So really give you wide area illumination within a little under 500 feet or 150 meters, right? And you can see typical color temperature there is 6500 K, and no worries if you haven't worked with color temperature before. This is measured in kelvins. It really discerns kind of the perceived warmth or coolness of the light. So once you get above 5000 K, that's going to give you a more bright, crisp light resembling daylight. So really makes sense for a lot of these applications, right, when you're thinking about what color temperature one might want. Moving over into the high beam side, it's an LEP white light. You may have heard of an LED, probably obviously before when changing out something for energy efficiency over the past few years, but LEP lights, they're brighter and they provide higher penetration at night. And then they have longer range with lower energy consumption. So a lot of benefits there when it comes to the high beam of the spotlight here. And that illumination is going to be a bit tighter field of view at 4 degrees. We'll cover about 15x or above for the zoom camera, as we'll see in a quick example here. Overall, fairly lightweight and portable with the size and weight, about 760 grams there. And then reliability overall, working temperature from -4 to 104 degrees Fahrenheit, and an IP54 rating. So it goes well with the aircraft, the RC Plus, the H20 series, and having that IP rating for tough conditions that operators may be flying in. So let's take a look at some of this functionality in a bit more depth, right? First off, we covered how we have a low beam mode, and you can see what that option looks like in the Pilot 2 app there. So that's going to be a pro for short range search and inspection requirements, right? We talked about the field of view there, and you can kind of see we're at about 3x for the camera there, but if we punched into 5x, that would go ahead and cover that zoom view. And then our high beam mode, right, in this kind of same zoom configuration as above, that's going to be more of a long range application, a specific inspection beyond 300 meters there with that LEP, laser white light technology. So once again, looking at about 15x there for that higher zoom view. You can see, punch into 15x, and it kind of covers what our spotlight is looking at in this case, and that's up at 100 there. So you can see kind of have the easy tools there built in on the right side to adjust low beam, high beam, both on. And let's cover some more modes here as well. Of the strobe mode, and you can also turn both of the payloads on at the same time. So if you want to do low beam and high beam, overall your central luminance is going to be higher, right, than just using the high beam mode. And your field of view is going to be that of the same as the low beam mode, right, because you're turning on that full circular coverage. So strobe mode, won't play that again to stress anyone out, but that's 5 hertz on the strobe flashing. So if you were trying to get someone's attention, maybe private security side like we'll talk about, get someone to leave an area, strobe mode is a nice tool to have in the toolbox. On the right side here, you can see one of those inspection photos there, taking advantage of that max central luminance as we punch in with that optical zoom camera. And once again, kind of circling back to the rated power, overall that lower power consumption is going to help us keep a longer flight time. So rated power with that 300 or 350 is going to be 68 watts, with the high beam mode coming in at 17 watts. When we come into actually operating the camera as well, we have RC plus shortcuts there. So you can utilize your C1, 2, 3 buttons in the back for turning the light on and off, adjusting the brightness, changing what lighting mode is being utilized. Again, so operator can quickly make those switches there. Overall, the casing itself is heat resistant, so it is a light. It's going to get hotter, but if the plastic casing is going to, the hottest is going to be 122 degrees Fahrenheit under kind of your maybe typical nice day ambient conditions at 77 degrees Fahrenheit. And really the idea behind this is preventing accidental burns during battery replacement or payload removal. So once again, something to be aware of and something we've thought of on the design side of the house. Next up would be human eye protection on the ground. So we limit that spotlight brightness to 40% when it's on the ground, similar to something, but not necessarily as much of a danger, right? If you H30T, that iris spotlight doesn't work when you're on the ground, as there isn't necessarily really a use there. So just something to be aware of if you're trying to demo and it's on the ground, you need to take off to go up to 100% there. And then it is a low risk safety classification for human eyes there with risk group 1 for the payload. And then we do have payload protection built in for temperature, current, and power. Kind of talked about the heat generation that comes from pushing the power through the payload, as well as the lighting in effect there. So kind of important to have the backups there to help safeguard. Can see in the top right, the gimbal following taking place. You saw in some of the previous Pilot 2 screenshots the ability to configure that on the left side. You can adjust the optical center in high magnification zoom if there is a bit of a discrepancy between the spotlight and your additional payload. From my experience, it has been pretty spot on, given we've had the chance to work with our product directly there. If you are doing something like smart tracking, you can keep that spotlight linked to the H20 series as well. So it continues to follow it, illuminate the area, helping out the smart track function and also illuminating whatever you're tracking. So on the search and rescue side, right, after you find someone, get the team out there, providing them constant light can definitely make a big difference in helping the team work. And it's also going to take some cognitive load off of you with the pilot if you use that smart track plus gimbal sync combo of the spotlight itself. And then here in the bottom right, you can look at the flexible installation, right? Either of the ports or up top. So you do have flexibility in regards to where you're deploying that spotlight. If you're having 3 gimbals on the system, with that 350, or you're going to go ahead and put something, those two at the bottom of the 350 here. So flexible to any GIMP port for either the 300 or the 350. All right, next up, talking about some of the applications. Just going to do a quick sanity check on my side, make sure everyone's hearing things okay. Got one comment of someone not being able to see the slides here, so if you do want to try rejoining, looks like everyone else is doing okay there. So I think everyone else, yep, looking okay so far. So moving into our next section here, going to the application side. So for the Spotlight, we really see it as a big search and rescue tool at night, or if there's some type of natural disaster where a team needs lighting on the ground. We've started to see drones used more as more. One is a kind of a tool for the operator to better see what they may be looking at, but also as a benefit for the ground team, right? It's easier to work in that lighted environment than something where it is dark most of the time. And then we talked about that security patrol as well, right? Patrol at night, emergency response, being able to light up a scene, perhaps deter someone if needed. And also on the asset inspection side, and if you're not familiar with the utility space, you might be wondering, well, why don't you just do the inspection during the day? There's actually, some lines that are going to have a higher load at night. So if you're looking for anomalies or issues with the thermal camera, really would be advantageous to do it at night. That's something we've seen some crews do. And if you wanted to supplement that thermal inspection with some visual photos, being able to light up the scene can be quite useful there. Also, once again, you don't know when storms or emergencies are going to happen, so having that tool can be useful for crews responding. All right, moving into the V1 now. So with the V1 here, and V stands for voice broadcast. We already had L obviously taken on the L1 side, so couldn't do L1, but that is a bit of the naming behind the V1 side, if I hadn't seen that already. But we're going to have multiple broadcast modes that we'll talk about here. Teams thinking about how powerful could they make the sound in regards to extended reach, getting out to 500 meters or 1,640 feet. Making sure that the gimbal pitch could follow another gimbal when going side by side to correctly project the broadcast there. And then finally, kind of the ability to mount it in different places, as well as the reliability of the platform, right? These additional accessories are great, but if they're back in the shop or having issues, isn't going to be good for anyone at the end of the day. So really focusing on the reliability of the system as well is always a key part of our R&D testing before putting these out for folks to use. So diving into some of the specific specs here, rated power is going to be 25 watts for the speaker itself. We talked about that audio coverage out to 500 meters. The effective frequency range, you're looking between 800 hertz and 8 kilohertz there as well. Overall, fairly lightweight as well, so coming in a little bit less weight than the Spotlight, as one might expect, at 690 grams, give or take 10 grams there, and a bit smaller size as well. The gimbal system is specifically pitch, and you can see that goes from -120 to 20 for the controllable range. And you have your different operation modes, right? You could just leave it straightforward. You could have it follow the other gimbal as well, and you can easily recenter it there. So once again, IP rated, goes well with the rest of the systems we had talked about before, and that working temperature of -4 up to 104 degrees Fahrenheit. For the functionalities, kind of take you through those here on the right side. On the remote controller itself, you can do a voice recording, you can go ahead and do a playback, or it can save an audio file for broadcasting. So if you did want to go ahead and do that kind of instant broadcast out to the scene, do have the ability to quickly deliver that information out. Can go ahead and do text to speech as well. You can adjust for different tones and speech rates, or simply just keep looping that text as well if you need to repeat it. On the audio file side, supports MP3, ACC, and WAV, and you would import those audio files from the local RC storage. So we can play those files overall during a mission to improve efficiency without having to necessarily talk into the RC on site, though we have optimized for that workflow, as we'll talk about here shortly. So probably not going to be broadcasting at 1 meter, but one of the specs here is that maximum loudness is 127 decibels, which is equivalent to the sound level of a jet taking off. So definitely you don't want to go all the way up on the ground, but have some safeguards there, as we'll talk about shortly. But looking at that 500-meter range, when you're recording audio from the remote controller itself, as you can see here in the bottom right, we have directional audio capture from the remote controller itself. So that's going to help reduce any additional environmental noise within the area. So definitely a very powerful benefit there as well. You can see our clip from our launch video here in the top right, showing some broadcast from the drone. Talked about the ability to follow that gimbal pitch of another gimbal, but really just trying to make sure, maybe if you're looking at something, that's where the audio is actually being broadcast there from the system itself. Overloading protection here as well for heat, overcurrent protection, similar as you saw with the spotlight itself. If the drone is on the ground, you'll get a warning if that volume exceeds 40%. Just trying to protect folks on the ground. Have remote controller shortcuts for recording, to start that recording, to play that recording. Overall, just make it easy to operate and trigger that during your operation. You can mount it on any gimbal port as well. It is fairly compact and easy to carry at the end of the day as well. Some of the applications we see for the speaker here, the search and rescue side of the house, right? Someone's lost or injured, being able to communicate. It's one-way communication, as we know at the end of the day, but being able to broadcast a message out, providing some reassurance or guidance until help arrives. If you're doing any urban search and rescue, right, delivering instructions or warnings to individuals who may be in dangerous or hard to reach areas, like, hey, we have a boat coming, or hey, let's work on getting this line over. Emergency announcements on the law enforcement side, right? If the team doesn't have a good option from like a squad car to broadcast an announcement regarding like the presence and use of a canine, could use the speaker there. Security, once again, trying to deter upon detection there of a patrol. And then one of the more unique cases we've started to see as well, a wildlife deterrent, keeping birds or pests maybe away from crops or sensitive areas like an airport runway. And then livestock management, right? Directing livestock using different sound cues as well. Some people do that, which is the sound of the drone as well. But overall, some of the more creative use cases here on the last side here for the speaker. On the ecosystem side of the house, we do have this available in the mobile SDK. So that has been released with support for S1 and V1, some of the different applications we talked about today, and that's, as always, available in our mobile SDK release notes on the DJI developer website. And getting into the after sales side of the house, right, what comes in the box itself, you're getting the payload, a gimbal port protection cap, the storage box, and the manuals. The spotlight also comes with a lens protection rubber cap and a lens cleaning cloth. Given that it has a lens on it, V1, those don't come with it, as there's no lens to worry about there. For the DJI Care Enterprise, you can see the covered areas there and sales model. So for the service binding, you'll use the activation code on the Care activation page to bind, and can see fairly typical like across different DJI products there when it comes to the basic 2-year and Care Enterprise Plus in regards to the validity and how one can renew it across all three. So Enterprise Basic is going to be valid for 1 year, and you can renew that up to twice until the 3rd year. the Enterprise Basic. You can renew Basic Plan once until the 3rd year, and the Enterprise Plus, you can renew it up to 2 times until that 3rd year, right? So you can get 3 years of coverage at the end of the day, kind of depending on which way someone would like to do it. For service content, water damage coverage, we have free 2-way shipping there, and the number of replacements and the availability of DJI Care Express, right, varies across the plans there, as you can see. For covered parts, it's going to be the main body of the V1 and the S1, so pretty much the payload itself. And then can see the binding requirements here, right? The first binding of DJI Care Enterprise can be purchased if the product meets one of the following criteria: it's brand new and unactivated, or it's activated less than 15 days, or less than 72 hours have passed after it was repaired by an official DJI service center, right? The same as usual for the DJI Care Enterprise Plus here, can be purchased when the product meets all the following criteria, hasn't exceeded 2 years, and the Care Enterprise purchase has not yet expired or expired within 15 days. Sales channel available in our PI system. I think we've covered these in depth here, but just reviewing some key selling points and FAQs here, compatible with the 350 and the 300, only with the RC Plus. IP54 rating, max illumination is going to be 35 lux at 100 meters. For illumination range, you have low beam, you have both on, and you have high beam with different distances there and different field of views, right? Low beams gives us out to 15 degrees, high beams tighter at 4 degrees. And we talked about some of the illuminated areas there. And I think covered kind of the differences between the 3 modes there, right? Low beam, if kind of on a wide, evenly distributed beam spread. I think, comparing it to your car is a good, option here as well, right? We're trying to get a wide overview. High beam, it's narrower, but it's going to have better penetration. And then best on, if we were trying to give maybe a suitable ground operation lighting or long distance lighting. You may experience some fog on the lens if you're in a high humidity environment. It doesn't affect the optical performance during use, but just after you're done with it, put the spotlight in a dry ventilated area to allow that fog to dissipate naturally. If you're working at night, it could trigger false obstacle avoidance depending on the situation. So if that does come up into play, you can go ahead and disable the obstacle avoidance and make sure you're operating in a relatively open, unobstructed area there. Don't want to touch the spotlight lens directly. You could scratch it, and if you disrupt that surface coating, put a scratch in it with a hard object, can affect the output. And then overall, when cleaning the lens, that's why we have kind of a soft, dry cloth there with it. Don't use alkaline cleaners. And then make sure, as with all payloads, dry, ventilated environment. Don't want too much ambient humidity there. So similar Q&A here with the V1 regarding what we can use it with, the IP rating, and we talked about the jet engine from 1 meter away, just how kind of speaker specs go there, but really the max effective sound distance there is out to about 500 meters. You can go text to speech, you can do record and broadcast, or you can go ahead and broadcast a file. The text to speech supports English. And a couple precautions here. If you pair it with the H20 and the H30 series as you're broadcasting, and you're zoomed in at 35 times or above, that could cause image shaking, right? As we're broadcasting and the speaker causes a little shaking there, right? Our gimbal technology is good, but there are limits to it at the end of the day. So you can reduce the volume a bit if that becomes a problem. And then just storing the speaker as well. One thing that's not noted here, just from experience, is if you are putting the spotlight and a H20 on the dual gimbal mount, it's best to hold the gimbal or the payload and gimbal mount 2 while the first one goes ahead and calibrates, and then the second one will go ahead and calibrate. If you turn like H20 all the way to the right, the laser rangefinder can run into the speaker payload there. So just something to be aware of at the end of the day for operation and startup there if you're utilizing the spotlight with the H20 series.